Welcome to the Social Your Sales podcast. Social has changed the B2B and professional services sales landscape forever. We are here to help you navigate what you need to know and how to execute these new strategies. Whether you are a sales leader, individual producer, or a member of the C-suite looking for answers, this is the podcast for you. Now here are your hosts, Brandon and Eric.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Social Your Sales. I'm Erik HOLDO, sitting aside
Brandon Lee.
There we are. We're back again, and today we've got an episode with a gentleman, Thomas Ross, who's the founder of a company called Social Sales HQ. And what's the other one?
Easy Digital HQ.
Easy Digital HQ. And Thomas is a very interesting character. He has been in this sales training game. He's been in this at a very high level, certified with all the big names in sales training and whatnot for years and years, for about 25 years. So he's somebody that has seen every aspect of this. And he is now laser focused on bringing new life to selling using social, using digital specifically. And it's really an interesting discussion because this is where we really start talking about not just what do I do on LinkedIn, but this is the entire approach. Yeah. And he's a guy that goes in there and helps companies make that transition. What were your thoughts about it?
Yeah, and that's what I love about, Thomas and I talk quite a bit, and this is the first time he's been on our show, but, he's one of the partners with our DLA community. Mm-hmm. And so he and I are on quite a bit, and we do our digital download. But, Thomas approaches sales, and then social is a piece of it. And he also approaches social as a medium for communication to help a company do the things that it needs to do, and that includes HR, recruiting and employee connectedness and all. It's not just about sales. And as some of our listeners may not know, is that FunnelAmplified didn't really start in social selling. Right. Like, we started around the HR side of recruiting and telling your story and all this. And the challenge is we were early, and it was before story brand and so much emphasis on culture and all that. And it was seen as, we can just go blast job openings, and that really isn't the best use for social. And so he talks through that and that overall, what does it mean for a company to embrace social? And
it's really about that change that companies need to make towards putting the customer experience at the center of that entire process. So sit back and enjoy the next episode of Social Your Sales with Thomas Ross.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Social Your Sales Live. I am Brandon Lee.
Erik HOLDO.
And Eric is here, of course, with me. And we have Thomas Ross with us today, and we are going to talk about sales over the last 25 years. Thomas is one of the founders of Social Sales HQ and of Easy Digital HQ. He's got a long history with helping sales teams develop sales processes and sales skills. And he is adopting social as part of that process. So, Thomas, welcome to Social Your Sales.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you here. Hey, we started talking before we recorded about your 25-year history with sales processes. And do you want to share a little bit about your background? And because I think it's important to see what you've done and where you've been to get to your beliefs today around sales.
Sure. So as you pointed out, I've been involved in sales right from the get-go. So right out of university, I went right into sales. I was actually a stockbroker and a financial planner for the first part of my career. At which point, I think I had a cell phone on each hip and one in my pocket. And
where was your pager?
Yeah, I had one of those at one time as well. Yes, and I had a team of about 17 different planners working through our office. But I got burnt out from the industry, and one of my clients way back when actually asked me if I would come in and help him build his sales team. and rebuild what they were doing. And I put down all my cell phones and kept one, I believe. My Motorola, I believe I kept.
Your BlackBerry?
Yeah. In any case, and I came in and I did that, and I spent about 6 months putting it together for them, and I realized that was probably my calling. And I started to put together sales processes. I created a company at that time. I've created a few along the way, and developed a business where I came into corporations and basically took over their sales department and put them back together, right? And that could mean training leadership. It could mean training sales teams. It could be creating sales process and sales development. And over a period of quite a few years, we put together programs and systems and processes. Along the way, we worked with the Miller Hymans of the world, the Sandlers of the world, the Dale Carnegies of the world, and many others. And I got certified in many, if not all of those, and brought them to bear in the accounts where they made sense to do so. And we worked with large enterprise clients, and we worked with small local clients. It really didn't matter to us. And we put in place for them sales processes on a one-on-one basis. So we didn't come in and consult, we came in and did the work and got the results with their team, and then created accountability for those teams in every case so that it could be measured and the metrics would be found against the sales process.
You know, I'm always interested about metrics in sales. There are many out there that are, you know, there's first of all, there's where CRM fits and what CRM does to track metrics, and the fact that most sales reps hate using CRM in the first place. And then there's the KPIs that are generated generally across the board, and the weight that sales managers put on KPIs. And by the way, social, I think we're entering a period now where social activity KPIs are going to become more and more necessary if you engage in structured content sharing or a strategy for social selling in general. But what's your response? Because there's quite a few sales coaches out there on the marketplace that walk around their neighborhoods with their iPhone cameras, talking about the fact that and making fun of KPIs and making fun of sort of everything we use to track and measure. Is that just old-fashioned, or are those KPIs, you know, relevant, and do they actually tell us anything, or is it just measuring a broken system?
So there's two questions. The first of which is, are KPIs old-fashioned? Absolutely not. Right. The second of which is, are KPIs from an old sales process out of date? Probably, right? You know, the one thing I love about social selling in the digital world is the KPIs can now be measured in real time, right? And we can actually see the activity that we know gets the results. Whereas the old days, if you will, you know, the sales calls and the sales forms and how did that go and who did you talk to and what points did you cover and the CRM and all of those elements. Most of that was well, you know, for lack of a better word, it was mostly BS, right? So most salespeople spent their time fudging rather than actually putting in good data, right? If they bothered at all, right? So that was the problem. Today you don't get away with that. You can't get away with that because digital's real time. You're either doing it or you're not. And I can see exactly what came of it immediately, right? So when we create KPIs for those sales teams today, we can see what they're doing and how they're doing it or not. And then we can see the results thereof immediately, as to can they.
And do you advise those sales leaders on what not to get hung up on? I mean, because there is some, you know, it's the garbage in, garbage out with any sort of activity. So with digital, yes, there's tracking, there's real-time tracking, but there's still old-fashioned metrics that have to be tracked manually as well. I think it depends on what type of sale perhaps you're embarking on, but not everything is a automated feedback in a business-to-business
Well,
capital equipment.
It's automated. When somebody has an engagement in a conversation and they actually develop the contact and they're developing different facets of that process, that's not automated. That's a real-time activity that I can
and that's in digital social type selling, but we have to meld the two worlds together, right? So there's I think what you're saying is that those KPIs are real-time and very valid on the social digital engagement side of things. But if we're talking about the traditional sales methods,
let's take a step back. So let's talk about that sales manager or that VP of sales or that CMO or the CRO or whoever they happen to be and whatever the title today might be, because very often those titles are just used to mask the reality, right? So they need to be the first frontline people to learn what digital and social selling is. If you're going to train your team, there's no value in it if you haven't been trained yourself. If you don't know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and why and how those results do or don't come, then don't bother wasting your money. You need to be trained first, period, full stop. Now, when that happens, then you will understand those metrics and those KPIs that we can use, some of which are traditional, no question, but they can still be measured. And we can now create a sales process in the digital world to align with what you're doing, right? And some of the activities that we used in the past, whether it's roaming the countryside in a paid vehicle and knocking on doors, or whether it's showing up at trade shows, right? Or whether it's sending emails on a spammed basis, all of those things don't get results and cost us money. So let's stick with those things that do get us results and make us money, right? And that can still be some forms of emails. That's not to say emails can't be part of what you're doing, but the way you do it and how you do it is radically different.
Absolutely.
Right? The days of just cold calling, big long lists, that's not an effective use of anybody's time. But the days of trying to reach somebody who is unreachable any other way, right, by phone, that's still valid. And I still do that. So there are many people that I want to connect with on LinkedIn, right, that are there, but they're not really there, right? So they've got a profile and they're there, but they're not active, and they're not active in other ways. So if I want to reach that person, I'm going to phone them. So the phone still works, amazingly enough, but it needs to be put into context, right? And it needs to be aligned with a process that works. And then once you've got that process configured, now you can go back to your CRM, and hopefully it's a social CRM, and you can align it against the remainder of the activities to make it work for your team.
And that's really the root of what I was talking about, is that's where you're coming in and helping companies beyond. I mean, you've obviously helped companies with traditional sales methodologies in the past. So with that background, now you can take the new and the modern seller's attempt and the modern buyer's journey and bring that into the digital world of how sales approaches and builds relationships and engages those folks with still being able to provide KPIs. I think in the early days of social selling, if we call it that, I kind of hate the word, but in the early days of social selling, it was sort of a wild, wild west in many ways as far as what was being done and how it's being tracked. Now that there's some good mechanisms for tracking that engagement level that can be done on a larger scale, I think that really provides opportunity for sales management to be comfortable and have some familiarity now with this new area of sales. Is that fair?
But I've got to come back to the point I made earlier, because it's incredibly important. If you train your sales team and all those frontline people that you know need to be trained, and they go through this process, but you yourself have not been trained and don't understand that process, the whole thing is going to cave.
Yeah, no, right? I agree with that.
They're looking to you to know what it is they're doing and to help them accordingly.
Right.
And if you can't walk the walk, it's not going to work.
And that doesn't matter if we're talking cold calling, emailing, how you present yourself at a trade show, how you present yourself at lunches or dinners, and social media. I mean, overall, if our sales leaders aren't doing it, they're not going to know how to lead and train and coach and encourage their team. And that's so relevant right now, in my opinion, because social is so new, and even the leadership, mostly the leadership, doesn't even know what to do with it. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, and I would go beyond that, in that I would say it's not just about the sales leadership, it's also about leadership, period. Right. So it's about the CEO and the C-suite and the boardroom. They need to understand the reality of what's changed and how it's changed, so that can bleed down effectively, because sales teams are no longer your salespeople.
And the reality is most of those
big comment.
Most of those CEOs came out of sales. I mean, just if you look statistically, most CEOs come out of sales roles and sales leadership, and their mindset of how you sell is still how many cold calls did you do, how many demos did you do, how many proposals did you put out, and that's the cadence that they're looking for. So you're absolutely right. It has to start up at that top level.
Yeah. And it's always going to be, what was the activity and how much of it did you do in a way that was successful? It's just a question of which activity.
Right. And is that, I mean, what you were alluding to there, I think, and there's a question here actually, is that I do see some companies, and in my opinion, not enough, that will have like a chief evangelist or a chief social, and they do podcasts, they do videos, they do whatever. But that's it. The rest of the team, the other C-suite, the rest of the board, other people, it's like, oh, they do social for us. Is that kind of what you were implying there? Like they all need to be doing it, not just some assigned person?
That's exactly right. Everybody in the organization can be active with respect to the content the organization puts out, and be active with the content of your clients, your vendors, and your suppliers in a way that creates a full circle of great material that your customers can look at and reference for further purchases from you or otherwise. And you need to create, and that creates your brand as well as your employee advocacy, right?
Yeah.
So it's just no longer true that you've got a marketing department in that part of the building, a sales department in that part of the building, and then customer services in the building across the street. If you function like that physically or mentally, you're going to have a very disconnected, poor result.
So Thomas, thank you for that. And I know you're really big into customer experience. And I think you use that term because of what you just said. We got to blow up those silos. We need to come together across all of those departments and look at the customer experience. And I think you have some pretty strong opinions around sales enablement as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you mean with customer experience and how old playbooks around sales enablement are just missing?
Yeah, so people have forgotten, and maybe it's less about that, and maybe it's just they've missed what has happened with customers. If you look at the retail environment, they know their customer upside down and backwards, and they communicate non-stop, right? You walk by their shop, and they're already communicating with you, right?
Right.
Retail's nailed it. B2B, not so much, right? So those same concepts and that same thinking, although in different ways, are no different for B2B than they are for retail. We need to be talking to our customers and put our customers front and center. And their experience is what delivers us the results. Today, most customers will spend 50 to 70% of their time researching you long before they ever talk to you. Now, if you don't start with that premise, then you've already begun the race at the wrong spot, right? So there's no way you're going to win that race. You've got to realize the customer's already halfway through the journey or more, and you've got to meet them there, not pull them back and try and sell them, but meet them there and provide more information. And that's what customer experience is about. And it's about giving them access to great information. It's about meeting them where they are and helping them continue with that journey, even if that means, hey, we're not the best solution for you, but these guys might be.
Right.
You have to be willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, and I've found personally over the years, when I'm willing to do that, it seems like I win more deals, or they refer me, or they come back for other areas and all that. I think they just appreciate that.
Yeah, or in some cases, they even reposition their needs. Social Your Sales will be right back.
Is your sales team struggling to hit quota? Are your buyers ignoring your sales requests for conversations? The third tier of digital transformation is social. Is your team equipped to meet this challenge? This show is brought to you by FunnelAmplified. We help sales teams align their sales process with how modern buyers prefer to make their purchase decisions. FunnelAmplified is a social selling platform that drives new opportunities with your sales team, using proven social selling tactics to drive pipelines and hit quotas. With FunnelAmplified, it's quota achieved. To learn more about FunnelAmplified or start a free trial, please visit us at FunnelAmplified.com.
The strength of being that trusted advisor, you can't overemphasize that how important that is. And part of being a trusted advisor is that someone's going to give you an honest appraisal of whether those needs fit or not. It actually gets to one of my hot buttons about sales not researching their customers enough.
Right.
When they're, how many times have I walked into a meeting with a sales rep who really didn't understand what that company was going through, that there were regulatory issues, compliance issues, liability issues, what's in the news, what's in the annual report. None of that happens before they get there. So how are they going to have a meaningful conversation with any sort of a decision maker?
Right, exactly. And especially today, given that's all at your fingertips, literally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? There's no excuse for that. Yeah. So you have to be prepared. Yeah.
So Thomas, we sort of talked a little bit there on like sales enablement tools and how those playbooks aren't fitting. Do you want to flesh that out a little bit more? I know you talk a lot more about it, and I don't know if now's the right time to jump into that. But how is it that some teams are still using these sales enablement tools wrong in the current environment?
Well, and I don't want to be too flippant, so I'll try to avoid that. But most sales enablement tools are garbage, right?
That wasn't flippant at all.
No. Most are still very much built, like it or not, and for reasons that you can discuss at length, but they're very much built on old traditional thinking. And they don't know and they don't realize the very things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
The customer is not the same today, right? So by the time you've talked to the customer, they've already looked at 2 or 3 other solutions online. They know what you do or don't do, or worse, you weren't online and you had no good information there and they don't want to talk to you.
Right. Or they've talked to their social community who, coach them, advise them to go different directions, and you never even got an at-bat.
So the playbook means that you now need to be in that process. Mm-hmm. And that process means you have to be credible. And not only do you have to be credible in the way that you were speaking of, that is to say, being trustworthy and giving good information, but you have to be online in the digital world providing that information and being seen as that credible person and actually engaging with people in a manner that brings that experience to them. And that isn't about one platform or the other platform. That's about any and all platforms that match your customer profile. Getting back to the research you were talking about earlier, right? If you don't know your customer, stay home because I don't need you.
Right.
Right? You've got to know the customer. You've got to know where they are, why they're there, and fulfill the needs that they have on the basis of how you provide that information to them. And that's what your playbook really is. So if your playbook's about Twitter, if your playbook is about Facebook, if it's about Instagram, if it's about LinkedIn, they all come to play a role in your overall process. But the idea that you're only going to use one is not going to be effective for you.
Well, and I think a lot of them, and this is where I get really, really baffled by, is what they do, their process is, okay, marketing manages the corporate page and sales go figure out what to do. And at what marketers may say at best, and I would say is at worst, they have some sort of a employee advocacy tool that marketing is sending brand approved brochure information to everybody and high expectations that they're all going to publish it. That's what I see. I thought you were going to say something.
I would totally agree with that. And that's the disconnect, right?
Yeah.
Marketing people have been trained for the most part on marketing processes and systems that in many cases are outdated and need to be updated. Salespeople, same thing. So they're both working in their little silos doing their own thing and it's not aligned. And the customer is not in the middle. The customer is not even in the picture. One's throwing out information hoping for leads and the other's trying to grab some of those leads and or people that they can talk to. Right. And neither one of them is getting results. So social and digital allows you to put that all together. Again, you're still using some of the skills that you've gained over the years. They don't disappear. You need them. Yeah. Sales skills, you can't buy sales skills. Sales skills get developed because you use them and hone them, right? And it's the same with great marketing people. You can't buy that. They learn those skills by honing them. But this continues. This evolution continues. And today the evolution has led us to social and digital selling.
How often when you're going into an environment and you're talking about developing these playbooks, because I know for a fact in many cases there really isn't a playbook. There may be a social media manager or a team of social media managers, and they control what's being posted, and they've got their calendar and they follow that calendar, and maybe they're engaging some of the subject matter experts, maybe they're not, but it's not what I would consider a playbook. It's not cohesive necessarily to what the field needs. Now, in the world of ABM, I think they're trying to tighten that process up, and all well and good. But my question to you is this: what sort of pushback have you heard when you're going in, talking to senior executives or leadership or marketing leadership about bringing social in as part of this? To what extent are they trying to lock the reps out of doing anything that may represent the brand online? In other words, they want to control messaging. They need to be on brand. Everything needs to be on brand and the right colors and the this and that. And they don't want the employee saying anything online.
That's a big problem, and that does exist. And that's one of the walls that we need to bring down. And when we were talking earlier about the fact that it starts at the leadership level, that's why. Mm-hmm. So what we do in many cases not in as many cases as we possibly can, is we do workshops with the leadership team. Mm-hmm. And those workshops are wonderful because we'll usually take it, and again, I'll be somewhat blunt with my language. We take them and beat them up for half a day or a day, and we beat them up. Mm-hmm. And by the time we're done with them, they now know what it really is and what they thought it was by comparison, right? But out of those sessions, we're also able to create a digital roadmap. And in that digital roadmap comes the very things that you're talking about. How do we take that sales department, that marketing department, that customer service department, and any other areas that can benefit, including HR and procurement and other areas, right? And bring them into the digital world at a pace that meets your needs, because you can't do everything all at once. Right. So let's prioritize that, create the roadmap, and let's get in there and start implementing and training the people in the way that needs to be done. And that's what comes out of that. But if you don't do that, and you don't get that through to that leadership team, then you're stuck with those very old ideas that you just talked about. Oh, we don't want to muck up our corporate brand. It's been ours for 20 years. And we want everybody to carry the right flag and be wearing the right color shirt. And, and the cards have to look like this. And your shoes aren't polished. What's wrong with you? You know, this kind of thing. Yes. That doesn't work anymore. Right. None of that matters.
Exactly.
Right? So it starts at the top.
Well, thank goodness that doesn't matter anymore, because I hated polishing my shoes. In any case, I think it's such a needed service that you're providing to these companies to help them make this transition, because I think so many companies right now, this is the year that they're realizing they have no strategy. That they have no strategy that unifies this social animal, this digital thing, with traditional sales, and how do I bring that into one cohesive environment and teach my leadership, my sales leadership about it? How do I bring everyone along on this journey in order to get everyone on the same page and in the same environment. I remember when I was at Xerox back in the early 90s. Great sales training back then for the traditional traditional methods, right? But one of the things that unified all of us was the Malcolm Baldrige Award process of trying to get in place for Malcolm Baldrige Award, and how we would analyze situations and create root cause maps, fish bones and all this other sort of great stuff. They're actually tools I still use to this day, by the way. But
yeah, sure.
But it gave us a common cause of why we were learning these things. Now that's all sort of outdated, or everyone knows about it now. But this new digital opportunity, it provides that new event for us all to sort of learn new things. Because I think that's the hardest part about someone who's been in senior management for 20 or 30 years, all of a sudden having to reposition how they think and what they think. That's a hard thing to do, just speaking realistically.
And it gets, it gets more challenging than that.
I bet.
If you've seen some of my content, you'll know that I challenge the very organization.
Yeah.
So you've got all these levels. You've got the executive level. You've got the marketing team. You've got the sales executive team. You've got all these. That org chart was created in 1950 something, right? And it belongs in the garbage.
Right.
That's junk.
Yeah.
Right. You need to realign your whole organization around customer experience and get everybody focused on where they need to be playing. Your organization needs to be flatter, and it needs to be directly communicating with the customer at every level, right?
I've got one last question, though, because when we talk about changing all of that, now I'm thinking as a sales rep, is this going to affect my comp? Because at the end of the day, sales reps that are in, especially in the B2B world, their comp plan is based on their sales effectiveness. And if there are more people involved in the sale, what a sales rep is used to knowing is that the more people involved, the less my commission, because it's got to be split across the board. When you go in and consult, do you actually provide input as to compensation planning and things like that as part of the process?
We absolutely do. But in answer to your first question, the answer is yes.
They're gonna pay to play.
They're now in a different position. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean they don't have opportunity, right, because they do. But the opportunity has changed, and the method by which they get there has changed. And now they've got to rely on a team. When you go into a company today, I can remember back in the day that I started. By the way, my Xerox training was cassette tapes, so that'll tell you.
Nice.
I still have them, right? But in any case, you go back to those days. You only had one or two contacts in a company. And that's all you ever dealt with. Right. Today you got 20 or 30.
Right.
You're not going to manage that. I'm sorry. I don't care how good looking you are or how nice you are. You are not going to manage. You need your team to work with their team.
Right.
And we all need to work as a team and aligned with their needs in a way that drive not only today's sale, but tomorrow's and the next day's. The idea that it's a one sale wonder, that's got to go too, right?
Exactly.
So we need to develop clients, not just put them on the books.
Well, just by the sheer nature of subscription services these days, I can buy a car by subscription. It's no longer buying it, right? So everything can be by subscription of some sort, which means that ongoing relationship becomes so important.
So you said a lot of great stuff, Thomas. And as we wrap up, and this may not even be fair to say it, so wrap it up. But what are some simple ways that an organization can get started, even looking at this? Because it's a lot. It's scary.
It really is, and that's something that we've identified, and that's why I started Easy Digital. The first way to do it is to get a digital audit and an analysis, and that sounds complicated, but it isn't. It's really to, based upon certain criterion, rate the organization as to how digital they really are today versus how digital they think they are. Mm-hmm. And then from doing that, we can say, let's look at a workshop with your leadership team or this team or that team, and let's put together a digital roadmap. Now, on that basis, if sales is the priority or marketing is the priority, whatever the case may be, we will bring to bear the tools and the training that's needed to move that along. But I caution people, the idea that a digital transformation can be done in the next 6 months is right up there with, I don't even know what to say, winning the lottery, I suppose. It's not going to happen, right? So you've got to take one step at a time and prioritize on what you're going to do. And you need an active outside company to be leading that process, project managing that with you on a hands-on basis to get it done. If you're looking for a consulting report that tells you the obvious, please go ahead and blow your money, call me later.
Exactly.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thomas, thank you so much. We are running out of time here, but hey, Thomas, tell everybody how they can find you and connect with you.
Well, there's not many places that you can't connect with me. So you can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. You can certainly connect with me on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. And you can find me under Social Selling HQ. You can look up social sales experts and you'll find me there. So that if you can't find me, then I've got work to do.
Yeah, well, if you can't find them, you're not trying. Absolutely. Well, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. And just, I feel like we could probably do about 3 more episodes if we kept unpacking all those topics that we addressed today. So thank you so much for that. Any last words?
No, I appreciate it. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Oh, that was fun. I look forward to doing it again.
Thanks, Thomas.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Social Your Sales podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. Social is meant to be social, and sharing is a great way for us to meet you and get to know you. Click on share and tag us at FunnelAmplified, or just use #SocialYourSales.